Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is children, youth, and social media. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about children, youth, and social media, Alana McLaughlin. I think many of you might be familiar with Alana. She's been with us a number of times. As a matter of fact, she started with us at the age of 8, and she's been with us as a regular guest since that time. And this day she decided to talk about children, youth, and the social media. And of course, Alana, let me welcome you to the show as well as the audience this morning to talk about what I consider to be a very, very important topic, and that is children, youth, and social media. But before we get into this topic, Alana, let's see if we can talk about you, about your background, your education, and some information in reference to some of your experiences. And then by that time, we should have finished this first segment, and then we'll get into the topic, children, youth, and social media. Let's start from that perspective.
Well, a little about me. My name is Alana McLaughlin, as you've already stated. I go to John Early Museum Magnet Middle Prep, and I am on the student council. I have won the Abigail B. Jordan Academic Excellence Award. I am Junior National Young Leaders Conference alumna, and I'm just alumna of a number of things. I try to help out wherever I can, YMCAs, churches, events I can, and I try to do good by the world.
And Alana, I think that we've always made it a problem, not a problem, but an idea that we would have our audience to know that all of these topics are of your selection. That is, it was your idea that you talk about children, youth, and social media this morning. And so as long as we understand that, let's see if we can start off by talking about what you might call children, youth, and social media by giving us some information about what we mean when we talk about social media and how we might have access to social media this morning.
Well, social media is basically the websites that, everybody's on, Twitter, Facebook, etc. And there are all these websites that people can get on, put content on, talk to other people on. And social media is a helpful thing. It can also be a destructive thing. That's why so many social media sites are banned in so many school districts. Like at my school, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that's banned. We can't get on those websites. And so basically, social media can be good in some instances, as in, looking up something, watching a YouTube video of something, for educational reasons. But then social media can also be a destructive thing. We've all heard stories of, the girl who was saying this on Facebook or saying this on Twitter or doing this on Instagram, and, where she offended some other person, people targeted her. And you know what? People like to come after other people on social media. And that's why I try to keep my distance from it. But, it's inevitable that we're going to at least have one social media profile. I know you have Facebooks and Twitters, etc. And they've become a part of, daily lives. Our daily lives. Because we need them in some instances, or we feel like we need them.
Okay, very good. And so in a real sense, you are familiar with social media. You've got a website. You've participated in activities dealing with social media. But now what about children and social media? What we'll try to do is to at least start off talking about children and social media, and during this second segment to pick up at that particular point. What about children and social media? Should children have access to social media? If so, why? And if not, why not?
It depends on that child's level of maturity. I don't really recommend it though, but we can talk about that in the next segment. And so I'll get more into this in the next segment, but I don't recommend small children about 9 and under having social media, because it's a bad world out there.
Well, I think you started dealing with social media at the age of 8, yet and still you don't believe that.
No. I started on your show at 8, but I didn't make Facebooks or whatever until about 10 or 11.
Okay, and of course, Lana, what we'll do, we'll take this first commercial break, and then we'll get back and we'll pick up at this particular point talking about children and social media. And we anticipate you giving us some information in reference to some of the things that you've been involved with since you started this particular show, because you've got a large number of videos on all aspects of social media as a result of this show. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show this morning. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's giving us some information relative to children, youth, and the social media. And of course, Alana, let's see if we can pick up where we left off the last time. I think you were giving us some information in reference to whether or not children should have access to social media, and you're talking about the pros and the cons in reference to it. And let's pick it up from that perspective, and then we'll talk about other things as we move on through this segment.
Well, this is a very controversial subject, so I try to look at things from both point of views. Now, I'm kind of in the middle as to if children should have access to social media. Now, having Instagrams, Twitters, Facebooks, all that, I would kind of wait on it, wait. But then again, it all matters on that child's maturity, mental stability. Like, if your child has, anger issues and is very fragile, if someone says something that could be interpreted as rude or mean towards him or her, and then your child should not have social media. Mm-hmm. I think it kind of takes a lot to be able to stand social media, because once you make one, it's inevitable that you're at least going to get one hate comment. You're going to have times where, when someone's not going to like your photo or blah, 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 you're going to feel like, wow, I'm so ugly, and then you're going to go lose it. But you'll have to understand this before having social media accounts. Now, I also think, yes, they should, but in schools. Now, I'm not saying that, all districts should lift the ban on Facebook and etc. But I do know that I think they should be allowed to use it, but with a teacher's supervision. Like, if the child is doing a project on 9/11 and they want to look at some news reports from 9/11 and they don't have a TV or a computer at home, then I think that teacher should supervise the student using her computer or a computer to get on YouTube and make sure that the child is not going down the wrong path of YouTube, because there are different sections of YouTube, and I promise there are some you will not want to get into. So I think that it should be used for educational purposes in schools. I don't really think they should lift the ban on Facebook and all, because you could be in a class and a girl could be bullying you. You could just up and go to the library and be like, she is just such a blank, and you know what, she did blank to blank. And you know what, next thing you know, somebody's getting mad at somebody ends up injured, parents end up mad, there's a big lawsuit, and nobody wants a big lawsuit. So it's kind of a yes and no thing. There are some websites that children should not get into. There's some websites that I don't get into for the mere fact that they're time consuming and they're too much to even handle. Like, I know of children who like to do a thing called catfish, which is where you'll create a social media profile, but as a profile picture, you'll add someone else's picture, and you'll add different information besides your true information. And you know what? I know kids who have done that on eHarmony. And a couple of years back, there was a 13-year-old girl who had a boyfriend on Xbox Live, and he lived in somewhere in Kentucky, and she drove from, I think, Texas to Kentucky. She stole her parents' car and tried to drive to Kentucky, but she was found here in Nashville. And her dad actually drove her to meet her 12-year-old online boyfriend. And that's crazy, because she had to drive from Texas, and she got so far as Nashville, and she was coming from San Antonio, I believe. I don't even know. But that's a pretty long drive, and for her to be able to make it to Nashville, having to go on the interstate, and being 13 and not knowing how to drive, that's dangerous on so many levels. But she did it because she was in love with a 12-year-old boy. I don't know what happened to the couple. Maybe they're living happily. I doubt it, because who was in love at 13 and 12? You should be worried about what you're going to do as a class project at 13 and 12. You should be worried about Justin Bieber at 13 and 12. I mean, I personally don't like Justin Bieber, but that's none of my business. Anyway, so it really depends. If your child, if you're a laid back person and you let your child do all the social media stuff, monitor what they do. Monitor their computer activity, their phone activity. Like, make sure you know what your kids are doing, because if they end up making, let's say, a Skype or some type of video chat, and they do all this stuff on that video chatting website, and that comes back to haunt them when they try to get a job somewhere. That's, your child was messing up their lives from an early start. So, it really depends on your parenting skills and, what your child's maturity. If you have, an 11 or 12-year-old who, you think is ready for this horrible, cruel, yet fun social media thing, then be my guest. Do whatever you want. It's your child. But you know what? It just really, it depends.
As a matter of fact, a lot of this has to do not only with children, but youth, which is to say that what we're trying to do is sort of move up from children to youth, and then make some statements in reference to that, and sort of wind it all up in this last segment, because I think that you're giving us some excellent information in reference to your knowledge of social media, as well as your knowledge of the internet. And I think that is essentially what we're trying to bring out more than anything, because we want all children and all youth to have access to the internet, perhaps if not social media, because there's more to the internet. You would agree, I would imagine. There's more to the internet than what we call social media. There are large other things that people can become involved in.
There's way more to the internet. I have a laptop, and I barely get on social media websites, but there are lots of fun things you can do. Hey, Google has this website where you can make your own 3D bracelets and get them shipped to you for free. You know what? That's fun to make. And you know what? You can go on YouTube or watch Netflix or do whatever you want, and it doesn't have to be social media. It can just be fun. Like the original purpose of the internet. I don't think that the internet was created so that you could bully your classmate and push her to try to kill herself. That wasn't the point of this. Just people turn that into that. The point of it was to have an online resource, to have encyclopedias, dictionaries, all at the click of a button. And this has turned into, people have started getting creative and making all these different things where people connect with each other, you know. I mean, that can sometimes be good. I mean, you can learn from Facebook. You know, your friend just had a baby, and you know what? Hip hip hooray for babies. But then again, you could also see your name blasted on something that you have no part of, and it just really depends.
Very good. And of course, Lana, we're going to take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's talking about children, youth, and social media. And she's given us some excellent information concerning access that children generally have to social media and the internet and the computer, and the positive things in reference to the computer, as well as some of the negative things. And so, Lana, let's pick up by doing this last 10 minutes of the show and talk about some of the other things, especially youth, not only children. I think we've tried to deal with children that might be within your range in terms of 8 to 11 years old and et cetera. But now, what about people who are much older, youth and adolescents, and the social media?
Well, I mean, adolescents, they're growing up. They get to, you know, decide what they want to do with their own lives. And you know what? Let them be. I think parents can kind of slowly back away from how much they monitor their children as that child gets older, because the older you get, the more responsible you are for your own decisions. And I mean, if you want to mess up your life with something, then, you know, you can mess up your life with something. But I think that parents should really close in on their kids, like younger, way younger, like 9 and under, when they try to do social media, because your child could be making YouTube videos, cursing and doing all this and doing all that. But then,
what impact would this have if a child happens to get on the internet? If an adolescent happens to get on the internet and he's making rude, unseemly comments in reference to a large number of things, does that have any impact on his or her life? And how do people generally react to that?
Well, see, society can be kind of crazy in a way. If your child is like 8 years old and, you know, cursing, doing all this, throwing gang signs, then people are gonna be like, where is their parent? Oh my gosh, get that child away. But if your child is 18 and doing all that, then oh my gosh, she's like so hardcore. Oh my gosh, she's so cool to be around. Like, oh my gosh, don't mess with her. And it really just depends on how you look at it. society views different people differently. I mean, if you have a black child doing this on social media, they were raised in the ghetto. Where are their parents? They're a crack baby. Blah 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 blah. If you have a white child doing this, oh my gosh, their parents just don't know anything. He needs to be disciplined. I think he's a good child. He's just going down the wrong path. You have a black 18-year-old doing the same thing. Oh my gosh, it's such a hood rat. You're a gangster. You have a white 18-year-old doing this. Oh my gosh, no, she just doesn't know what she wants in life. And I mean, that's how social media sees it. I mean, if you had just pairs of different races all doing the same thing, society would look at them all differently because of society standards. If there's like, I don't know, if somebody jokingly posts like an Instagram picture of KFC saying, hey, look, this is my awesome dinner night, and that person is black, oh my gosh, you're a hood rat, all you eat is KFC. If a white person goes there, oh my gosh, like, invite me, I want KFC. If you have just different races doing different things, it's just how they look at that. You know what? And that brings us to kind of a race thing. I mean, and I'm not saying that different races shouldn't do things. I mean, I do whatever I don't do whatever I want to do, but my decisions are what I want to do. I don't do something because, or I don't avoid something because I think, wow, they're going to think I'm quote unquote white for this, or that would trap me in everything I do. Like, I go to school and I learn, I get good grades. Wow, you're so white. But then if my white classmate does sing, you're just really smart. But why do I have to be acting white if I get good grades, but a white person is just smart? Like, we're getting the same grade. We didn't do anything. Is white a new standard now? I thought it was a race. I may be mistaken, but I thought it was a race.
Well, Lona, I think that you've mentioned also, and I think we've talked about this on a number of times, about how some young people are bullied in reference to social media, and there are some dire consequences in reference to some of the folks even commit suicide and that kind of situation. So what would you say to young people like that who might be contemplating, because they've been caught up in some of these situations you're talking about, if they've been contemplated to think of being bullied or bullying somebody, or perhaps even going so far as to take their own lives? What would you say in reference?
That reminds me of a story. There was a cheerleader somewhere in some state in the U.S. or whatever. And she was like the average cheerleader, you know, she was peppy and happy and pretty, you know. But her Facebook wasn't very happy. She was a hunter, and so she started going to different countries and hunting endangered animals and taking pictures of her, like, smiling, holding a bear's head, just, oh my gosh, look what I killed today. And everybody was like, and you know what? It shocked social media because they're like, wow, she's so peppy, but she's so crazy that she's hunting endangered animals and poaching and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? They bullied this girl to the fact where she had to quit her cheerleading team. And to this day, she probably still gets threats from people like, oh my gosh, you're so ugly, you're killing off humanity. And this also reminds me of the story of Amanda Todd. Amanda Todd was a girl who did some regrettable things on a video chatting website that I'm not going to state because, you know what, the website's perfectly fine. It's just what people do on the website isn't perfectly fine. And so Amanda got blackmailed for doing those regrettable things, and people took pictures of her doing those regrettable things, and they posted them on social media. And they posted nude pictures of her that she had sent, one of the regrettable things she did. And so she got bullied for that. And so at first she tried to, I think she tried to drink bleach, but she survived that. And then I think again, she moved schools and moved cities, and everything was going fine until, like, her past came back to haunt her. And I think this time she hung herself, and that's how she died. Well, in either way, she took her life and she succeeded.
And so what you're saying is that this can be social media in a real sense, unless young people know how to deal with it, whether they're a child or whether they are youth or adolescents and et cetera. It can be a very, very detrimental kind of thing, as well as having all of its positive things. It can also have some detrimental things. Is that what we're suggesting here today?
And yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that Amanda didn't know how to take it. I mean, oh my gosh, suck it up. I mean, it's just your nude picture going around the whole world, and people from different countries are being able to see it. But I think it's her parents weren't really monitoring what she did, and they didn't know until it was too late. And so that's why you don't talk to your parents. Tell them what you're doing on social media. Make sure, let them in on what you do. Friend them on social media so they can see what you do, because if her parents would have known what she was doing beforehand, they probably could have prevented that, and she probably still would have been here today. But her parents didn't know until it was too late, and it was going around, and there was no stopping it, because once you put something on the internet, it's there forever. And you can delete it as many times as you want, but it's going to be there forever. There's always going to be a way to track it down. There's always going to be someone wanting to hack you and be able to see that again. But once you put something up there, it's always there. Anybody can see it now.
And so, Alana, I think as we come to the end of this show for today, so you're saying that the internet is a good and positive thing. If used, it's almost like a gun. A gun can be a good thing and used one way, and at the same thing, it can be a bad thing used another way. And it's really, it depends on how a person is able to use a gun, internet, an automobile, or whatever, and et cetera. The most important thing I think that will come out of this today is that people have the right to make individual decisions, but they also should be aware of some of the problems that it will cause not only them, but others in reference to the decisions they make. And this is especially true, would you say, dealing with children, adolescents, young people, and the internet. Is that what we're saying? Summarize that for us.
I wouldn't use a gun as a reference because of all the gun controversy everywhere. But you know what? Your reference was right. I mean, it's something that you think is dangerous. If it's used the right way, it could be good. But if it's used the wrong way, it could be horrible. And, could push you to even take your own life. And so basically, monitor your kids if you decide to let them have social media. If they don't have social media, they'll be better off.
What if, and of course, let me thank you for this information. Let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
on her
Yeah.
because she was very close to him.
Okay, Dr. Baldwin, what we'd like to do is talk about the impact of religion on world peace. Mm-hmm. And you've the man, you've got a lot of information in reference to religion, religions, and
Yeah.
et cetera. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Talk about my own intellectual pilgrimage around it
that sounds
as it
good.
relates to Martin Luther King and my
Okay.
study of King. And
Okay, and so what we'll do with that first 6 minutes, we'll deal with what background, education, and experience. So
okay,
just give us that
and
kind
what
of-
led me to.
Just
Yeah.
give a summary of your
Okay.
background. That'll take
Okay.
6 minutes, and then we'll end that first segment.
Okay.
And then we'll take 2 minutes, and we'll come back with the 8-minute segment, and we'll deal with the impact of religion on world peace.
Exactly.
That'll be
Okay.
good, and that'll be 8 minutes.
Okay.
So you deal with whatever you wish to deal with. And see,
Okay.
I know nothing about any of that.
Yeah, you know about that, man. You a scholar too.
There.
Yeah.
And then we'll take that final break for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back with 10 minutes, and we'll deal with the Middle East, Africa, and et cetera.
Okay,
Whatever areas
okay.
you wish to deal with.
Yeah,
Is that all
okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we'll
Sounds
talk
great.
that way.
Uh-huh.
As you'll find out, that this is one of the foremost authorities in terms of the African American experience. Dr. Martin Luther King. This man has more books on Dr. Martin Luther King than any other single individual in the world. Just retired quite recently from Vanderbilt University after a career of
30 years.
30 years at Vanderbilt, teaching religion at Vanderbilt University, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had him on this show on just a number of occasions, and he's got just so much information. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the impact of religion on world peace and community. And we're fortunate to have with us a person who has considerable information in reference to religion, civil rights, and a number of other things, Dr. Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin is no stranger to this show because he's been with us almost, 65, 70 times, Dr. Baldwin, since we first started back in 1984.
Exactly.
You were here with us when we started in 1984, talking about Martin Luther King and James Earl Ray and et cetera. And of course, we're delighted to have you here with us to talk about what we consider to be a very, very important topic, and that is the impact of religion on world peace and community. Let's start off, Dr. Baldwin, by demonstrating to the audience some of the things that we've already said in reference to you by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of eventually leading you to us this morning. And then that second segment, we'll have an opportunity to get started for the next 18 minutes dealing with the impact of religion on world peace and community. Let's do it from that perspective.
Well, I would begin by saying that I grew up in a community in Wilcox County, Alabama, Camden, Alabama, that was very tension-packed, and there was a lot of violence and a lot of hatred and a lot of segregation. So at that particular point, I developed a deep interest in the role that religion might play, not only in eliminating problems of segregation, but in eroding the problems that cause war and human conflict on a global level. So having grown up in Camden, Alabama, I was born there in the late 40s. I grew up there. I went to Talladega College in Alabama, Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, and from there to Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. And throughout my intellectual pilgrimage, I was always concerned about what religion has to say to the ethics of war and peace. So that's my primary concern. How can religion today be put to the service of world peace and community? How can we use the creeds of religion, the practices of religion to bring about world peace and community?
And so, in a real sense, the impact of religion on community and world peace is something that you've dealt with for a long time, and you've got some excellent information, I'm sure, in reference to that. Now, we've got a couple of minutes before our first commercial break. Let's give us an overview in terms of what it means when we talk about the impact of world peace, of religion on world peace and community. Just an overview, a couple of minutes overview.
Yes, I think we have to begin with history, because if you look back at the beginning of Christianity, the early Christians were actually had in mind a peace mission and a peacekeeping mission. And Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr., often talked about the early church as a kind of model for what we should be about today in terms of bringing about peace and a sense of community across the world. So I grew up studying Dr. King in college and seminary and graduate school. And actually, Dr. King and one of his intellectual influences, Mohandas K. Gandhi, inspired my interest in what religion might say to our struggle to really bring about world peace and community on a practical level. You can talk about it on theoretical level. And that's where you get at Gandhi and King and others, Albert Lutuli in South Africa, Albert Schweitzer, all of these other thinkers. But Dr. King and Gandhi were more concerned about how you bring about world peace and community on a very practical level. And I developed that interest as early as my college years and through my seminary years and my graduate school years. So much of my writing about Dr. King in recent years has focused on the relevance of his thought, the implications of his ideas for dealing with issues of world peace and community.
You know, Dr. Baldwin, we live in a world today that really is in conflict. And I think that we're getting ready for this first commercial break. And when we come back, I want you to take this next segment to deal with the kind of conflict that the world is in today and what we can do in reference to it. Because everywhere you look in the world, on all continents,
All levels,
one way or the other, you see that there's killing, destruction, and etc. And in some instances, all in the name of what? Religion.
Exactly.
And of course, that we want to touch upon that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Louis Baldwin, and he's the retired professor at Vanderbilt University, and he's given us a lot of information in reference to the impact of religion on world peace and community. And Dr. Baldwin, let's pick up at this second segment and allow you to, I think in terms of all of your experiences and all of the information that you have to bring to bear during this 8-minute segment, dealing with methods of the impact of world peace on religion and community. Do it from that perspective, because I know you've got all that information.
I think we have to begin, with the history of the Christian church. Martin Luther King Jr. used to often say that the Christian church in the apostolic years was actually a model for how to deal with peace and war issues, because the early Christians did not fight war. He said they were martyrs. They went to the grave with a song on their lips, a prayer on their hearts, and a smile on their faces. So what Dr. King said essentially was that the early Christians established a certain kind of creed. And the creed was that human beings are interrelated, that love is the supreme unifying principle of life, and that we should be about building peace and community. So I look back to the early church when I talk about peace and war issues, because I think it's very important in terms of what we think of a standard for how our actions should be today. But when we look at today, you got war going on between Shia and Sunni Muslims in Iraq. You got war going on in the Middle East between Jews and Muslims. You got a war going on in India between Hindus and Christians. And in our own society, Christians conflict with each other. So I think perhaps one of the most important issues confronting our world today is how to bring about peace and a sense of community between the various religious traditions.
In other words, without all of the conflict between religions, then there would be is that what we're saying?
Exactly.
It's so contentious. Is that what we're saying?
That's what we're saying. We focus a lot on race. We focus a lot on ethnicity. We focus a lot on issues of nationality. But we need to look at religion, because as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1964, religion has caused more tragic wars than anything else. At the same time, religion claims to embrace creeds that prevent violence and war.
That's a contradiction.
So yes, quite a contradiction, and ironic, of course, but Dr. King often said at the same time that we have to think in terms of the ambivalent role of religion, that religion could also be a force for peace. So we have to put the principles of religion to the service of peace and community in the world, and certainly things will work out better.
Very good. And of course, all of this simply leads to some of the real issues that we're having today, some of the issues in the Middle East, for example. Now, this is especially an issue dealing with religion. I mean, religion that has been so extreme that people are literally cutting off the heads of people now. Does that seem? That seems something that is so barbaric that civilization has never reached this particular point.
And so contrary to religious creeds. You're talking about ISIS in Iraq and what's going on with the Islamic surge in parts of Iraq. There's a lot going on in terms of the conflict between Sunni and Shia Muslims. In the Middle East, you got conflict between Jews and Muslims. And I mentioned in India and Pakistan, of course, this conflict between Hindus and Christians and Hindus and Muslims. So what you have today, I think, is religion being at the center of a lot of global conflict. But what Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi taught us is that if religion goes back to its founding principles, all religions go back to what? This idea of love as a supreme unifying principle of life. If they go back to this idea of peace mission, they go back to this communitarian idea that they had, then we'll overcome some of this conflict. But the major factor, one of the major factors in conflict today, human conflict, is religion. And religion is supposed to be this solidifying force that teaches people what? that we are part of an interrelated
We're all
structure of
together.
reality, that what hurts one hurts others, that I cannot be what I ought to be until you what you ought to be, and that's what religion is supposed to teach. But unfortunately, it has not been put to the service of community and peace on a world scale, but has been what a kind of fragmenting force.
Well, how do you think in terms of trying to bring these various religious groups together to think in terms of this idea of the unity of mankind and world peace and community and et cetera, which is to say that if we've got all of these conflicts among these various religious groups, if there's a key to bringing them together under some religion, I mean, how is that possible?
I think Martin Luther King Jr. was right when he says that they have to realize the various religions of the world, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, that these religions have to come to a sense that they share certain common ideals and concepts and values. All of these religions were founded on the principles that humans everywhere are a part of a particular brotherhood and sisterhood. And once we remind religions that they share certain common values, certain common goals, and indeed a common value common destiny in terms of bringing people together, I think that's part of what we should be about. And then teaching and reminding them that they have to translate what they say in creeds into deeds.
Very good.
And Dr. King and Mohandas K. Gandhi had a lot to say about that. You not only proclaim brotherhood and sisterhood and community and peace and nonviolence and community and forgiveness, you not only proclaim these values in creeds, you also try to translate them into what? Practical action and practical reality. And that's how you what? Bring about justice and peace. And
We're
community.
getting ready for this final segment, Dr. Baldwin, and during the meantime, let's have you, when we come back, let's have you to reflect upon one of the organizations that might be in a position to sort of bring about this kind of unity among the various religions, the United Nations, and et cetera, and et cetera.
And there are many.
And speak to those organizations that are involved in doing some kind of work that has an effort to try to bring the various religious groups together and et cetera, et cetera. We want to do that and at least leave some kind of message in reference to that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the show today. We're talking to Dr. Lewis Baldwin, a retired professor at Vanderbilt University, who's giving us some information relative to the impact of religion on community, on world peace and community. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Baldwin, I think you've laid out a very good foundation in terms of the mm-hmm. conflicts mm-hmm. between various religious groups, and all of them believing that their point of view certainly is the correct point of view. But let's look at efforts on the part of all of groups to try to bring these various groups together and to make some kind of sense out of all of our creeds, which could bring about some kind of understanding of one another and et cetera. Let's start with dealing with organizations.
Exactly. I think when you look on a more regional level and perhaps even a national level, you have organizations like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which is a part of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. You have the NAACP, which is a national organization which claims to pursue peace and community through legislative and judicial measures. You also have ministerial alliances throughout the country, all interested in what? Pursuing what we call peace, world peace and world community. But what Dr. King called for and Mahatma Gandhi was interested in, of course, was a coalition of world religions that embraced peoples of all faiths to promote this idea of world peace and community. Dr. King called it moving from an emphasis on the arms race to the peace race. And he saw the United Nations, Dr. King did, and as very important in terms of its role as a peacemaking and a peacekeeping force. Dr. King often said that if world peace is to be brought about, the United Nations should serve an important role, because it's all about nations from different parts of the world, different continents coming together to share their values, their ideals, their concepts about what it means to live in community. And Dr. King called that a stress on the interrelated structure of all reality.
That's very good. That would be Dr. King's statement.
That interrelated structure of all reality. And I think that's what we should be about today, because we live in an era of global terrorism. I mentioned earlier about ISIS forces moving into parts of Iraq. And that's what we should be about, applying the principles of love, which is the supreme unifying force of all religions, peace, which is peace mission espoused by all religions, the communitarian ideal embraced by all religions. What we should be about is trying to apply on a practical level these principles to the world in which we live today. Because as I said earlier, all of these figures, King and Gandhi, even if you go back to the teachings of Jesus Christ, they taught us that humans are what they ought to be when humans are what they other humans are what they ought to be. I cannot be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And I think that's the defining principle of what all of these religions teach.
And so I think you mentioned this idea of love. I think that if there is love among all religions, and I think that every religious group would say that we're involved with love and
exactly.
But I think that the criteria has to be that of goodwill, understanding.
Exactly.
And if you've got goodwill and understanding, you've got a large part of what we might consider to be love.
Yes, it's about putting into practice what you say in your creeds and your confessions of faith. And this is what King and Gandhi often said. The problem is not what we confess in our creeds, in our confessions of faith, but the problem lies in our failure to engage in a kind of practical application of what we say in our creeds and in our confessions of faith. So it's a matter of moving from what we say to what we should be doing.
From I think you indicated earlier, from the creed to the deed.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think I think that sort of summarizes in a real sense what all that would apply to all religious groups.
Exactly.
Because all religious groups talks about love and it has a creed.
Yes, and I think all religious groups, if they are honest, would say that war and violence are obsolete. They no longer solve human problems. That we need to move beyond all forms of violence, including war. And how do we do that? We do that by not only affirming our faith, but also somehow or another practicalizing what we believe by engaging in practical efforts to bring about peace in the world. And different religions might have different ways of achieving that. But the important thing is to be practical about what we believe, to put it into practice. And that's how you bring about peace.
Dr. Baldwin, as a final note to some of the young people, you see, I think that there are some of us who are so old that we might never change.
Exactly.
But as a practical example, what could you say to young people today as to what they ought to do, no matter what religious group they might be affiliated with,
Exactly.
that what they ought to do and have to do in order to make this really a true world of what?
Yes.
Peace
And
community.
And
You see, if
community
that's,
and justice.
And justice. If that's those, for example, and especially justice. And I think that you are sort of reflecting upon what has gone on in Missouri quite recently.
In Ferguson, Missouri.
In Ferguson, Missouri. But what can you say to people like that in terms
I think
of what
young
religion?
people have fallen victim to this idea that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is the best way of responding to human problems. And I would say to the young people that they need to study people like Gandhi and King and Albert Lutuli in South Africa and Albert Schweitzer and other figures who gave us a different way of dealing with human conflict. Violence never solves anything. Violence results in a cycle of violence. And I would say to the young people that they need to be more intentional about how they respond to issues of human conflict. Violence will not solve these problems. You have to think in terms of these religions and what they have taught us about love and justice and peace and the creation of community. And I think there's a lot there that young people can learn from. It's not a matter of joining a particular faith or a particular religion. It's about subscribing to certain kinds of values. If you believe in the dignity and worth of all human personality, if you believe in the interrelated structure of all reality, that we are all related to each other, that what happens to one also happens to all of us, if you believe in those principles, then certainly you will seek another path.
Well, Dr. Baldwin, I think one of the issues here, though, is this idea of to speak to those issues is really to, in a real sense, overall speak to religion.
Exactly.
And I think that as you know well, that there has been quite a bit of controversy in terms of what we call teaching religion in schools. Now, how do you incorporate some of the ideas and et cetera, without being charged with teaching religion in school that might violate the Constitution, and et cetera, and et cetera? What do you do in reference to that?
I think this whole idea that we can teach without the influence of religion in schools is really unrealistic, because we've all been influenced in this society by religious teachings, religious values, and we bring those teachings and those values to bear on everything we talk about. So I think that is no problem. You can't teach religion in schools, but you can teach values at the educational levels, all educational levels. And I think what we need to do is to say that, hey, I'm not trying to promote a particular kind of religion. I'm not trying to missionize people or bring people in a particular faith. But we need to understand those values and embrace those values that are essential to human welfare and survival. And those values are about peace, they're about justice, they're about living in community. And as I said earlier, and Gandhi and King often said, The basic principle is that we all are part of an interrelated structure of reality.
And I think that Jesus summarized it simply by, and what we're all trying to do here is to say, love thy neighbor.
Exactly.
And I think that if we love our neighbor, then we shouldn't have any problem in terms of religion.
And do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
That's very good. And of course, let me thank you for this day, and let me encourage you to tune in again next week to another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and good morning.
All right.
Thank you. I'll come up with Kelvin, Kevin, or whatever. So I said, K Walker.
K Walker, get it covered real good, huh? I hear you.
Yeah, Dr. Baldwin here, he's talking about the impact of religion and social institutions, etc. Okay, it was an excellent show. Yeah.
Would you mind giving me a mic check?
Mic check, 1 2 1
I think I
2.
might need some help to keep this
Yes,
from rolling
sir.
away. I can get up there.
Oh yes,
Jacket.
girl, I got this many moons ago, and I was like, I remember my rule of thumb: you don't ever film with your arms out because you're in the South. So I made my husband drive me this jacket on his way to class this morning.
Could you keep talking a little bit?
Okay.
Checking your level in the back.
Do re mi fa sol la ti do.
What?
Don't do
You've
that.
been keeping secrets.
Oh, no.
Do re mi fa sol la ti do.
So this is
You sing in the choir?
Girl,
metropolitan
no.
school system, the impact of
I'm scared to think. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing back there, sexy? Yes, Gideon's Army.
Remind me to send you the flyer.
Okay.
We've got an initiative.
Check, check.
That I
1
want you to
2
be a
1 2.
part of with,
Check, check. 1 2. I'm
MMPS
listening.
Parents Advisory Council.
Keep talking. I've run out of things to talk about. I know it's a little challenging, but check, check. 1 2. Hello, hello. All right, thank you.
A minute or two in reference to background education, then we'll give you a couple of minutes of background education experience. A couple of minutes background education experience. We'll be running out of time after we introduce it because we'll have 6 minutes for that aspect of the program. Then we'll have a 2-minute commercial break, and we'll come back with 8 minutes, and this is where we'll pick up with empowering students and advocating for youth, advocating for empowering parents, and advocating for
youth.
Okay.
Very good.
What's the initiative?
What's the first thing? Is,
No, you. You were telling me about an
Oh,
initiative.
UNCF. And I'm going to
Sorry.
infringe on his time and tell you all about it.
Okay.
But yeah, UNCF.
Okay.
okay, y'all ready for the show?
Of
Okay,
course.
this will be a good show.
Make sure I don't have anything exposed.
And I raced as well.
Let's see.
I was trying to put on a blouse and some pants, but I was like, I'm not gonna make it.
No, I don't know about
Don't
that.
you, girl?
That's in the fantasy now. You know, that's
It's too late for that.
Okay, I'm
There
sorry.
you go, girl. There you
I'm sorry.
go.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, usually they say I look like a pit bull. I always look mad like, I'll get you.
If folks acted right, you wouldn't have to make
There
them
you go.
faces.
There you go. There you go.
Power and
Look at you there.
Don't be running up on me like that.
You want to pay bull for real on that.
Don't y'all be running up on me like that. Okay, wait though. While you got it up close, hold
The
on.
dialogue, you want us to primarily look at you, not the camera.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the cameras will do their own
They'll do
thing.
their own thing.
All
Don't
right.
move, don't swell with the chair.
Oh man, that's right. I gotta lock my feet.
Yeah, that's why
I had to
kinda-
do that last time.
Yeah, because I'm the same thing. I'm a
I will spin all the way around. Whee!
Okay. And just talk. I am the only one that can mess this show up. The only way you can mess it up is not talk.
Okay.
It really doesn't matter what you say.
I need lip gloss.
Talk. Talk.
Talking, huh? It's the only way.
Because most folks will watch you pass it through the kitchen and they'll catch a word or two. They don't know what you're talking about, and so they'll say that you're saying the same thing and not saying anything at all. So y'all did an excellent show for us earlier. Metropolitan school system, empowering parents and advocating for Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the Metropolitan School System, and the topic is empowering parents and advocating for youth or advocating for students. And we have with us to talk about the Metropolitan School System and the empowering of parents and the advocating for youth, Pastor K. Walker. And of course, Pastor K. Walker will give us some information in reference to his background, his education, and his experiences. And then we will hear from Ms. Lanier, who will also give the similar kind of information. And then Ms. Fatuga will end this segment of the show by talking about her background, education, and experience. Let's start off, Pastor, by having you to give us some information about your background, education, and experience. And then we'll go to you, Ms. Lanier, and Ms. Fatuga.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Haney, for once again having us on the show, and good morning. And we'd just like to say I'm Pastor Kelvin L. Walker. I pastor the Hands of God Christian Church. We're located in East Nashville. Born here in Nashville, Tennessee. Educated, I always say, partially in the public school system until I got up to a point before they started calling it the school to prison pipeline. I fell through that trap, got kicked out of the public school systems here in the state of Tennessee, all throughout Davidson County. And went to the Navy, went through the Navy, got out of the Navy, got a GED, did a little time studies in Tennessee State University. Of course, I got incarcerated in the prison system and did some studies at with Trevecca East Campus Prison Program, and did a few things later on years with Edmondson Junior College, which is now defunct and out of business. Don't have a degree in anything, but fortunate to be in contact with a lot of people that are very intelligent, very smart, and very degree professionals like the young ladies here on this panel today. And that's, you know, and when you got friends like that and associates like that and affiliates like that, you're smart.
And I can appreciate that. And of course, Ms. Lanier, let's talk about your background, your education, and your experiences. Ms. Fatuga will give us similar kind of information about her situation.
As always, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Erica Lanier, and I wear 3 hats currently. First and foremost, I'm a parent of 2 lovely daughters in MMPS schools. I also serve as the chair of the Parents Advisory Council for MMPS, and I serve as the education chair for the NAACP. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I was born and raised here, and throughout all my travels have come back because this is my home, and this is where I chose to raise my children. And I'm also a proud graduate, as you know. You were one of my mentors and instructors. I'm a proud graduate of Tennessee State University.
Very good. Ms. Fatuga, give us some information in reference to your background, education.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here this morning. My name is Rashida Fatuga, and I'm the president and founder of Gideon's Army, Grassroots Army for Children. I actually am from Cincinnati, Ohio. I came to Nashville, Tennessee to attend Peabody College of Vanderbilt University. I taught in Metro Nashville Public Schools for 7 very happy years, and then left the classroom to learn more and do more research and see how I could be effective outside of the classroom. I am a mother. I homeschool my 2 children, but I am an adoptive mom. And so I have 5 grandchildren who are in Metro Public Schools. So I am in a different school quite often, and I'm happy to be here. So
Very
thank
good,
you.
and we're happy to have you here. Pastor Walker, let's see if we can have you to sort of summarize the topic that we're dealing with today, empowering parents and advocating for youth. And then we'll come back during the second segment, and we'll start off dealing with Ms. Lanier, dealing with some aspects of what we're talking about here.
Okay, Dr. Haney, I think what's important to understand and note is that within the Metropolitan Nashville public school system, to me, in my opinion, I think the system could come up a little bit better than it is in terms of how we're training and teaching our children. As we had a meeting with the Board of Education not too long ago, we was able to present Gideon's Army to the Board of Education. And one of the things that I had expressed to them was the fact that if you've been trained as an educator to educate, then we have an expectation that when we send our children to you, that you educate them and not push them to the side, not medicate them because you can't seem to somehow find a way to educate our children. In other words, if you went through the educational process to become who you are and to have the position that you have, then I send my child to you. I have an expectation from you to teach my child. And if my child is not lining up in the way maybe that they should line up, then I expect you to find a way to teach them, because you've been educated to educate them. And that's what my expectation is. And I'm glad to be partnered with Erica Lanier and Rashida, because they are go-getters. They're on fire. They're passionate about what they're doing, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Very good. And of course, we'll start with you, Ms. Lanier, when we come back, excuse me, following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker, Ms. Lanier, and Ms. Fatuga in reference to the Metropolitan School System, and we're dealing with this issue of empowering parents and advocating for youth. Ms. Lanier will